Hey, my name is Brandon Cog Goodman, and you're about to watch another episode of Black Folks, where I have one-on-one conversations with different Black people of various identities, and we talk about our life and how being Black has shaped our experiences. So today I'm so excited because I'm talking to Cherrye J Davis, who is a phenomenal artist, an incredible filmmaker, and my best friend, who I call Twin. And Cherrye and I talk about the first time we felt seen or represented on stage and TV. We talk about Black theater specifically. We also talk about the erasure of Black queer people inside of the Black community. It gets deep, honey. You can watch that conversation on my IGTV at Brandon K. Good, on Tom Ellis's IGTV at Official Tom Ellis, or youtube.com/Brandon K. Good. Without any further ado, here is my conversation with Cherrye J. Davis. Enjoy. So this is Cherrye Davis. Cherrye J. Davis or
Cherrye
Cherrye
J
Davis?
Davis. Cherrye
That's
J
right.
Davis. That's
This is
right.
I call Cherrye Twin. So that's why we
Yeah.
don't know each other's stage names like that, because it's like twin, B, sis.
Exactly.
Okay, so
Exactly.
this is Cherrye J Davis, and as always, Cherrye, when I do this, I like to have the guest introduce themselves. So why don't you tell us who you are, and you can start with your pronouns.
Fabulous. Hey, everybody. I'm Cherrye J Davis. Think Cherrye like the Stevie Wonder song.
Come on.
She, her, hers. I am an New Yorker, first and foremost. I lead with that so much.
Yes.
I also am by training an actor. Also by practice a musician, a playwright, in profession also a teaching artist, a director, a poet, and a Prince enthusiast. This is very, very important. I have one tattoo and it's a Prince tattoo.
That's right. Is it of him?
It is not of him, but it is of the opening song off of the Purple Rain soundtrack, Let's Go Crazy. And it's Punch a Higher Floor, which is a great way to move through life. Don't let the elevator break you down. Go crazy, punch a higher floor.
We are like 3 minutes in and you already got the gospel out? Yes!
It's
I'm here for it.
Prince. It is gospel.
It's the gospel. I'm here for it. So Cherrye and I met because we took a class. It was hip hop theater studies, correct? And I remember Cherrye because Cherrye is just this gorgeous woman, this stunning, stunning, stunning woman. And she was on the other side and she was looking fly. We're both from New York. So she had a New York vibe to her. I feel like New Yorkers know that, yes, honey, give it to them. New Yorkers know when you know, NYU is full of people who ain't from New York. So like when you see your people, you're like, oh, that's my sis. And then I met you in the after class. I feel like we ran into each other in the lobby of Tisch, which Tisch is the school we went to, 721 Broadway. And I don't know what happened, but I feel like the rest is history. I feel like we've bumped into each other, had a conversation out there, and we've been inseparable ever since, right?
I would agree. I think after taking a class together, we ended up auditioning for and booking shows.
Yes.
And I think there came at a certain point, we had been in like 4 shows together in school.
Yes.
And it became a thing where it was suddenly like, are you auditioning for this? I'm also auditioning for this. Are you going to take it if I'm in? Okay, I'll take it if you're in it. And then like we would just, it became a running thing where we just don't do shows without each other at a certain point.
Yes, that is true. I think we did a lot of shows in school together and outside of school. We collaborated so much. And this is the thing, Cherrye gave you her list of her fucking, like what she does. And she does all of those things very, very, very fucking well. She is a phenomenal actress, a phenomenal musician, an incredible director, a brilliant playwright, a brilliant poet, and I've had the honor and the privilege to get the chance to collaborate with her. And more, I mean, I just feel so lucky that Cherrye has touched a lot of the work that I have done. Like usually I don't do a play or I don't put something out if Cherrye isn't gonna check on it. Cherrye
You
has
just
to put her stamp of approval on it before it goes anywhere. So Cherrye has read many a script, many a rough draft.
yeah. Well, I mean, for all the, I was like, don't be lying here on Al Gore's internet, okay? Don't be over here telling people like hyping
Not
it up.
Al Gore's internet.
Don't be lying on Al Gore's internet. No, but you're from the beginning. I think when we met each other, it was very clearly that I liked you as a person, but also I just respected you so much as an artist, and in our growth as artists, I've been constantly enamored and just inspired and challenged, and it's just been beautiful to see you grow. And you just feel like, wow, like I feel like I've been a part of a journey for you. But also, like, I feel like we carry each other on our journeys as well. There's not a piece I work on or write or anything like that where I don't go, what do you think you're thinking,
Yes.
So that's
I
why
gotta tell you, that means so much to me. And we are not crying in minute fucking 5 of this. That's what I won't do. But it means
no,
so
she's
much
got
to
concealer on. We're not doing
she's
that.
like, we're not running. We're not running.
We're not doing that.
That means so much to me coming from, because I do just and this whole, I could spend this whole hour just fucking hyping Cherrye up. I value you so much as an artist, but also as a friend and one of my best friends and family, like my chosen family. And I think that, being at NYU, being in such a white space, being oftentimes the only Black person in a classroom, my friendship with you really pulled me through. And there are a couple people like that, but Cherrye was able to fill the pocket of a friend and a collaborator and a sister, and a listening ear. Like, she was just able to fill so many pockets. And so I just feel so lucky and blessed to have you in my life still, and to have this Black folks conversation.
Yay.
Are you ready? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say just one last thing, and I think it's going to link very nicely into what you're saying, is that, we call each other twin, and I think that is deeply related to, we like each other.
Yes.
But also, there is a familial bond that is not just about, I like this person, or, I see a lot of myself in that person. It's an artistic bond too.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I see an artistic companion in many ways who will always like hold your feet to the fire, and also you will support them in their artistic journey. And also in the many branches of their lives. And so it's been pretty cool to kind of watch you also, as you even start these like beautiful conversations like we're having,
Yeah, thank you. And I think that you touch on something of just like, as we're talking about it, I'm like, oh, wow, this is such an important person to have in your life as a Black person, in our industry of the arts and of Hollywood and of theater, but just in any kind of space, to have that person that you can just like rely on, and who, as you say, can like push you to be better and stronger, who can grow you. And most importantly, what Cherrye really does for me is gives me perspective. So in those moments where I'm not sure if I'm being gaslit, I can go to Cherrye and she'll be like, yeah, 100%. 100%. And you're like, okay, cool. I'm not crazy. Great. So let me ask you the question. This is actually a good segue. The Black folks question of the day is, tell me about the first time you can remember feeling represented on TV, film, or stage.
Oh, wow.
Yes, come on. What was the first time you remember being like, oh, there I am?
Oh, man. Wow. Okay, well, I have two answers then, because I think when it comes to TV, and then I feel like there's an answer for like TV and film and stage.
Sure.
But I'll give the two most iconic ones for me.
Okay.
I'll do TV and stage.
Okay.
Let's start with TV. I remember being, as a young girl, growing up in New York, I was a latchkey kid for, in some ways where I would like come home before like my mom was off of work.
Yeah.
And sometimes would go over to like my grandmother's house and we would have our little snack and things. And then I would like watch TV after my homework. And I remember I wanted to finish my homework up because there was a show on TV that I didn't really understand, but I knew it was special. And it was called A Different World. And I knew, when you're younger, if you're, 7, 8, like, what do you know about an HBCU? What do you know about college? Like, what do you possibly know? It's like, not much. And like some of the themes you were just like, I don't really get this, but like, I'm going to pay attention.
Yes.
What I remember being so enamored with was not just a show being funny and enjoyable, and the characters were so likable and you were rooting for them. But then I also remembered the way that they dealt with topics, global diaspora topics.
Yeah.
There was the entire topic about like a company that gave scholarships, but also supported apartheid, and the students deciding if they were going to boycott this company. That's a massive conversation to have in a
huge
sitcom.
Conversation. Yes.
But it was so deeply important. And I think through that, I learned very early that you can be entertaining and poignant.
Yes.
You can be funny and smart at the same time.
Yes.
You can have a breadth of experience and range as an actor. Every actor on there was giving you beats.
Come on.
Right?
Who did you identify with most? Like, who was like your favorite character?
Oh, I was a Reese. I was 100% a Reese because I was like, I'm a super academic. I was like nerdy.
Yes.
I was just like, but then I was a little bit low key, like Jaleesa and Cree Summer at the same time.
Yes. Cree Summer was
characters. Freddie.
Yes.
I was like low key Freddie because I was already an actor. So I was already sort of like expressive and weird. And then Jaleesa, because I was like, was the person who wanted to have it together,
Wait, I'm sorry. You're not going to revoke my black card, okay?
No, this is
I am blanking on who Reese is now. I think I can.
Reese was she was a very dark-skinned, beautiful, shorter actress. She had the bob. She was a doctor.
Sorry. And yes. I'm here. I'm back.
Yeah.
I'm back.
Absolutely, like hilarious, and just had a gravity to her that was so different. And I definitely related to a Reese. I definitely related to a Jaleesa.
I was confusing Reese and Jaleesa. What is the actress who plays Jaleesa? Jaleesa.
Oh my gosh.
Jaleesa was the RA.
Jaleesa was the RA.
Yes.
Hold on now. See, we're gonna have
to Google.
Go to the internets. I got you.
Thank you.
I got you because I just saw her I just saw her in Tina on Broadway.
Oh.
Before. Yes.
Before everything shut down.
Yeah, before everything shut down. Let me see here.
You look that up, but yes, my favorite character, as I'm sure you know, was Whitley, obviously.
Clearly.
Jasmine Guy is everything.
Clearly.
From which also, like, I'm like, oh, that was my original Karen Walker. I used to love Karen Walker, Will and Grace. It was just Whitley.
So, like, it blew my mind. Can I just tell you? And here's the thing. And speaking to the point of seeing Black actresses have range, it blew my mind to hear Jasmine Guy speak in her voice.
Absolutely.
Because I went, you don't sound like Whitley Gilbert.
Right. And Jasmine Guy is ferocious.
Insane.
I watched School Days for the first time, like 2 months ago. For the first time I watched it. I mean, yes, all of that. All of that.
Yes.
Jasmine Guy in that movie, who doesn't have like a massive part, but oh my God.
Dawn Lewis it was Jaleesa.
Dawn Lewis.
Fierce dancer.
Lewis. Yes.
Fierce singer. and everyone could just act their face. So I remember watching that show and being absolutely enthralled and being like, oh, I'm clearly going to an HBCU.
Yes.
We did not go
We
to
did
an
not.
HBCU. We went to a PWI, for everybody, that is a predominantly white institution, right? Versus a historically black college
yes.
and university.
Yes.
But I think in my heart, I always am just like, Hillman.
So that was, that's your TV.
That's my TV.
I'm going to give my TV and then you're going to give me your stage.
Yes.
Okay. So my TV, I always go back and forth, but I'm going to stick with Jaleel White, Steve Urkel, Family Matters. I don't know what it, like, I started to go to school in like suspenders and I would do, did I do that? Like, that was like my party trick. like whatever that but you know what I loved about Jaleel White, and this actually is a conversation then about like masculinity, is that my understanding of like Black man, being a Black man, was so hardened and so overtly masculine, which I never felt like I fit into, which obviously makes sense in my older age. But Jaleel White had, he didn't display that. I mean, he was a nerd, but he displayed oddly, in his clumsiness, a comfort in his body. Like he didn't have to walk and move like Eddie, right? He didn't have to walk and move like Eddie. And in that, he was still, I mean, this is so complicated. Like he was still a sore, like a pain in their side, but they still loved him, right? Like they didn't, they weren't like, get out of here because you walk crazy. They were like, get out of here because you blow up our house every single day. But that was, to me, like the first time that I was like, oh my goodness, Jaleel White felt like something I could be. Steve Urkel, is that weird to say? Like I was like,
no.
Yes.
I think that's such a beautiful conversation to have also, the way comedy and the way sitcoms have really opened up even for a larger audience, but also specifically for Black performers and also generally for, Black folks, seeing the range of how different bodies can be represented, what comedy can be, and the representations of the many variations and representations of what masculinity can be, what androgyny can be.
Fresh Prince, Will Smith. I thought the way that Will Smith would play with his femininity and his masculinity inside of Fresh Prince also made him, and Carlton, I mean, that whole family, just like expanding what the representation of Blackness could look like outside of the traditional represenation of it.
Absolutely. And I mean, and to put sort of like a little note on that, just a little flag on that, like I've also been very excited by how those boundaries are continuously being opened up and pushed in TV. I look forward to more because I think we need more representations of the spectrum of what sexuality and how gender can also look and appear and exist in a conversation. So I'm super excited for how TV is going to open up as well in that way.
Twin, give me your stage representation.
Okay, my stage representation is like so many other aspiring theater kids. Lion King. I mean, first of all,
did you see it with Heather Headley?
No, I saw Aida with Heather Headley.
I saw it with Toni Braxton, which Toni Braxton was delicious, but I always wish I saw it with Miss Heather Headley, because
can we
talk about Heather Headley? Can we? Do we? Okay, for those of you who don't know, Heather Headley she originated the role of Nala in The Lion King, and then she originated the role of Aida Aida, the Elton John musical, and she won the Tony for Best Actress. And I don't know the years. I'm not that plugged in, but all I know is that she won, and it was fucking fabulous, and she deserved
Yeah.
it.
And
Let's bring it back to Lion King. I apologize.
Lion King.
Lion King.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, for all of the incredible performers that have crossed through the Lion King, right? I mean, we can't, okay. But anyway,
Yes.
I think the thing that floored me about Lion King, as someone who, you know, was a dancer at that time, I was like a little girl and dance, being like, oh my God, I'm so excited to watch people dance.
Yes.
It was the first time I had seen not just a majority Black cast.
Yes.
Broadway stage.
Yes. And that's a huge cast.
Huge cast. I also was watching African folklore. I was watching African images, hearing language, and I was watching an appreciation and an exciting appreciation of Blackness.
Yes.
You know? And we all know we're supposed to be looking at animals, right? On a Broadway stage, right? But just the incredible, it was just so incredible to look at the beautiful way that these animals were being represented, and the beautiful way that a continent was being represented.
Yes.
But then to look beyond those gazelles and those beautiful artwork and then to see these Black bodies.
Yes.
These Black women, in particular, Black women and femme presenting folks, these bodies. And I was like, oh my gosh, as a little Black girl who was in ballet and learned real quick that her butt was too big. It was so powerful to watch these bodies on stage and be like, I can do that. Yeah. I can do that. And this isn't out of reach for me.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's so important. And it also makes me think of how important Alvin Ailey has been when I would go see Alvin Ailey growing up. The same thing that you're talking about, like seeing Black bodies move, right? Like without words. Like it's the movement of the body. Obviously Lion King is a musical, so there is text and there's singing, but there's also something just about the movement of those animals, the movement of how they create those shapes. I'm still shook by the way they bring Mufasa into the sky. Still shook to this day, one of my favorite theatrical moments. And the same thing I think about Alvin Ailey, like Revelations, like you just feel, it's just, I don't know what it is about Black art and the way that Black bodies move, but it's different. That's all I can tell you. It's different. It hits different. It hits different.
Let me tell you something about Revelations, and especially for, I was going to say just a little sort of thing. I mean, and you know this, but my family, I'm one of the very few Yankees in my family. So
which
my
means
whole
Northerners.
Northerners, yes, Northerners.
Yes.
I was born in New York, but pretty much everybody else on my mom's side is South Carolina.
Okay.
And we're not talking like Charleston, South Carolina, which is like on the coast.
Right.
We're talking inland,
like South
fields.
Carolina. Yes.
Boonies. Like we talking like, you know, deep in. So like my family, when it comes to there being more about as many churches as there are people. You know, the Southern mysticism that exists within Black households, the food, the care, the culture, the concept of like dreams and superstition, the role church has, and baptism, all of that was present in Revelations. And that was like another way I think that the diaspora showed up in a really powerful way in terms of representations, because that show alone, you know, has created an entire many generations of dancers.
Yes, for sure. I also think about, if we're talking about like theater, Broadway, I also think about Fela, which I don't know if Fela had a massive commercial success, but my God, that was Can I tell you something? It was one of the first times I cried in theater, and it kills me because I don't know the name of the actress that took over for Lillias White. Lillias White was brilliant. I saw it with Lillias White
Mhm.
playing Fela's mother, and she was brilliant.
Yeah. I saw it
And
with Patty.
you saw it with Patti LaBelle,
Patty
yes.
LaBelle.
It was,
Mm-hmm.
but there was an actress who I believe came from the UK who was in between them. And Fela's mother has, I think, like one song, and it's this song, and she's at the top. But the show's brilliant. And she's at the top of the stage, and I was seeing it with my partner at the time and his family, and she hits this note, and I'm almost positive that this performer is an opera singer. So the way she hit that final note, Cherrye, when I tell you, I started like weeping, a quiet weeping in this theater. There's something about where that note hit me. There was something about being like the consciousness of being on Broadway, which is a white space, and the way that it was taken over by our culture and our history.
Mm-hmm.
There was something about the obviously this maternal connection that Fela's connection to his mother, all of that together just created this intent, like one of those it's why I love film and TV, but theater, which is where we were birthed, you and I.
Yeah.
It's a different. Those moments are inexplicable.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when the artists are Black.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, because I'm not anything but Black, so I don't know how it hits for a white person or a non-Black person. But as a Black person in that space, to see or to hear or to watch Black artists create with such majesty and such rawness evokes something that I think otherwise lies dormant or otherwise has to be compartmentalized throughout the day. Do you know?
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. I absolutely remember feeling the same way, seeing Fela. It was so cool to just be like, see all these like stunning humans command the space unapologetically, and not just like be tucked behind like 25 like other white chorus people,
Yes.
but be like, no, we're here.
Yes.
But I also hear you. I think a lot about this and the idea of like what makes theater, specifically Black theater, sort of ring out a different way. I think the tradition of the griot is really important to consider. I think that moment, I will.
Yes.
I will. So there is a concept, and I believe it's specifically kind of like rooted in a lot of West African cultures, but the storyteller, the griot, is literally as like the storyteller. And the storyteller isn't just someone who, goes around and being like, little Miss Muffet sat on and Tuffet, right? It's someone who holds the history of a people's or a place or a tribe, and their value and their role is to tell that story and hold that story and to share that story so that that story doesn't disappear. And so I think there's something beautiful about when you see Black theater, because you are seeing the echoes of that tradition.
Yes.
Even across the oceans, right? And it exists.
Yes.
And it's funny to see. It's always beautiful to me when I see like the diaspora, the spirits of traditions and things. They might not look exactly how they would look in, say, a Nigeria or a Ghana today, but you feel that. You feel that storyteller, the entire way that Fela, the way that they constructed the character of Fela for that.
Yeah.
Wasn't just someone who's a musician. They are also the storyteller. Yes. Also, another thing with the griot is that there are levels to the griot. And there's a certain level of sort of storyteller where it is not just about, telling a story. It's also about preserving truth.
Oof.
as well, you know? And so there are stories that we tell and myths that ultimately pass down legacy and image and all of that. But then there's also an element of what truths do we preserve and what truths do we continue to pass down and what truths are like essential for the preservation and the continuing movement of a people and of an energy. So I think all of the most powerful Black theater I've seen really encompasses those ideas, not just what do we want to pass down, but also what truths are absolutely essential for us to keep going. Does that make sense?
Oh, I overstand. I overstand. I love that. I also, you were saying that, I was like, I so often think of you as a griot. I think that you are such, if you ever, you know what, you do, and it'll be on my page, your most recent short, Covered.
That was smooth. That was a smooth transition.
Did you like that plug, honey?
I really did. That was smooth. I didn't see that coming. I was like, hey, wait.
Cherrye created a short that she just released. By the time this comes out, it'll be like a week or so ago, called Covered, and it's a 6 minute short. Is that right? 6 minute short?
It's about 6.5 minutes, just under 7.
6.5 minutes. Just about what it means to go on a run with or without a mask, and what that internal struggle is as a Black person, specifically as a Black woman. And so I always think in your work that you do such a brilliant job of telling stories and preserving truths. And so I'm so glad that that short exists, because more people can see it. But just in your stage work and in the things that you do, it's such a it's a title that I think befits you so well as an artist. So
thank you.
Say that, twin.
Thank you. I mean, I will say this. Even
New York agrees. Do you hear? New York agrees. They agree.
Yeah. It's because she doesn't sleep.
Yeah.
I will say this. You know, I think there is going to be also, and we're seeing this not just, you know, in working on my film, I definitely understood, especially as the film, you know, and, you know, folks will hopefully check it out, but it is about a Black woman reckoning not just with the idea of wearing a mask or not during this COVID experience, right? But also with the history of what a masked Black person has been interpreted as, right? So I think looping back to the idea of the griot, it's like, what part of that history are you holding on to and is important for people to know? And also what truths get to the core of that. And hopefully the film, you know, as people watch it, you sort of see what the truths are in what the experience is of being a Black body in this time.
What do you think your responsibility is as an artist? Like when you're creating, you know, I've had this concept, let me pull out a little bit. I've had this conversation about, as, you know, Black artists, as Black people, the feeling of having to represent the Black community as a whole, which can at times be a privilege, and at times I think can also feel like a burden. But specifically, when you are a Black creative and you're putting out work, I guess I'm wondering, like, what is your relationship? Like, how much are you thinking about the community when you create work?
Oof. I think about that a lot, because I think it is important to carry, for me personally, it's very important to carry that history, the history of where we've come from as a folk, but also where we've come from in this industry. Because I don't think I can personally move blindly and be like, I'm just gonna do whatever I feel like doing. Some people can do that, and that's cool. And that's cool. That's not my journey. Right? so I think about it constantly. I think for me, and I've figured out for myself that I am interested in not telling the Black story, because I don't think the Black story exists.
Yeah.
Regardless of, sorry, there's a little honk on the
They're
Eastern Parkway, y'all.
supporting what you're saying.
They are, yes. I would say that I don't think there is I don't believe that sort of like telling the Black story, because I don't believe there is one
Amen. We're not a monolith. Exactly.
Black story.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are truths that sort of lie over the diaspora, and
Sure.
truths that lie over a lot of different communities. But I think there are so many different stories and nuances that have yet to be told, still, are being told. And so for me, it's important not to tell the Black story, but to tell Black stories.
Wait, that is brilliant. I love framing it that way.
That sounds very simple.
No, it sounds perfect. I love framing it that way. Sorry.
Right. And as you tell stories, you're going to encounter the breadth of what Blackness means,
yes.
right?
Yes.
For so many years, it was assumed by some of our, no shade, but a little bit of shade, by some of our legends and the playwrights we hold up within our, our Black theater community and screenwriting community. They left a lot of people in our community out. And acted like they didn't exist. Mm-hmm. Specifically talking about my queer folk.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't make sense to me to be like, I'm going to tell the one story, because it's like, well, if you're leaving folks out, then what are you doing,
Yes, and that to me is where I feel it, because I'm like, I am Black and queer, and that those two things growing up have been at odds, right? Like finding my place inside of these stories, because I am Black, but then when you add queer onto that, it feels like I suddenly fall out of the stories being told. I suddenly don't have a place except to compromise the masculinity of the straight Black man, the cis hetero Black man. Like that is what I do. I compromise that. That's not what I do, but that's what the story of a queer Black person is that we are to be feared because we threaten the majesty and the holiness and the gravity of the Black experience is suddenly threatened by queerness. And so in my creating, I do want to center queer POC and queer Black people specifically, because it's like, we're part of the story. We're part of the history. We're part of the legacy. We are part of the experience.
Take it a step further, B. No, take it a step further.
Yes.
Black queerness is essential to the Black story. And if we can dig deep and read lots of books, right? But read lots of books.
Yes.
But queerness is a part of the Black story. It is a part of the essence of Blackness. It is a part of who we are. It'd be like chopping off a limb, cutting out an organ to act like this entire part of the Black diaspora doesn't exist, or just exists to be a threat or a joke. Like that's silly to me. And
which is what white culture does to it, but more painfully so, oftentimes Black culture does it to us as well, where, as you said, we're there to be the joke or to threaten the culture or the community, as opposed to understanding that the culture is also shaped by this side of things. The culture deeply, that the beauty and the expansiveness of a Black culture is that way because there's also this queerness that exists and permeates the space and allows us to try different things and allows us to quite honestly paint outside the box. Quite honestly, like, spread the wings a little further, because in my opinion, and this is my opinion, queerness at its heart is rebellion. You know, it is a rebellion to how things are done. It is a rebellion to the binary. And so how we move and how we sing and how we dance and all that stuff, I think you have to include your queer choir director. Like, I'm so sorry, those riffs, you might want to talk to your queer choir director.
Which is so deep. I'm so glad you bring that up, right? We
Mm-hmm.
want it in so many cases, but on TV and film and in our industry and in writing and all of that, it is important to represent all of those pieces and all of those individuals, because then there's also the idea that, you know, to flip on the other side, if you represent a Black queer character, specifically say a Black man of queer experience, or male presenting person of queer experience, you then either need to make them the threat or the joke, or their queerness is the only thing that defines them.
Yeah.
And to me, telling stories is not about making that one piece of their life a sort of like anchor point on, like, you know, to explain something away or to make them a sideline in someone else's character.
I'm
Because
so glad you're saying it.
Well, but we see it. We see it. And I'm, you know, that's why I get excited.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I get excited by, you know, a pose, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like you have a community that the linchpin is that, you know, we are all a part of a specific community in New York. Mm-hmm. that is very much queer, that is very much dominant in sort of trans femme experiences. Mm-hmm. However, that ain't everything that the story is about. The story is about who is that person when they go home?
Yes.
Who is that person in a relationship? What kind of relationships? What are they struggling with? Like, to me, that is so important. And like you say, you know, I agree. Queerness is rebellion. And we have to see ourselves. We have to see ourselves in, you know, the way that so many playwrights ask for, you know, the Black story to reveal something about us as a society, as a white society, as a white supremacist society. Mm-hmm. We have to be able to see ourselves in a number of stories, regardless of where you are.
Well, I think we have to be the one. We have to. We have to take hold of expanding who. How do I want to say this? There is a fine line, and I've talked about it before, and I'll continue to try and get specific about it, but where we walk this fine line of defining who we are based off of what we've been told, as opposed to defining who we are as a people for ourselves. And I think there's a fine balance here where some of it gets defined by the white supremacist gaze, right? The white supremacist lens of like, this is what Blackness is. And a lot of that toxic masculinity that happens inside of our community, I believe, is a hold on that white supremacist lens, as opposed to us taking hold of our Black narrative and saying, no, Blackness isn't defined by white people. White people don't get to tell us that Black has to be masked and strong and brutish. Black can also be soft and femme and gentle, and it can also be rageful without it. You know, it can be chaotic. It can be calm. It can be all these things. And I think it's our responsibility as Black people to take the fucking narrative back.
I mean, but that's why I was going to, just to echo you, I think that's the reason. What floored me about like a Moonlight, right, was that folks were just like, oh my gosh, what is it about this film?
Yes.
And I was like, there's so many things about that film, but the thing that stunned me, and it was so, and it's very telling how it stunned folks,
Mm-hmm.
is to see specifically Black male and Black masculine vulnerability
Oof.
in a number of ways. And to see it so very matter of fact, non-apologetic, you know, it was just like stunning to people. And I was just like, how interesting that that's stunning to us. That, you know, to the point where we go, yes, give it an Oscar, because it's like we've never seen it before. Because we haven't.
Well,
we haven't seen it on film.
We haven't seen it on film, and I'm going to broaden it so that people can really understand this, hopefully, which is, I think about when I saw Wonder Woman. And I remember the first big fight scene in Wonder Woman, and it stunned me, and it made me emotional, because it was like, I realized that I've never seen a woman on screen be that fucking strong and kick ass. And it was stunning. And it's like, oh, we haven't been allowed to believe that women have this inside of them. But I was immediately thinking about my grandmother and my mother, who, yes, they could do the same fucking fight scene, and quite honestly have. And so the same thing is true for us as Black people, where it's like, yeah, we've been boxed in. We've been told that this is how we act and this is how we show up. And it's like, no. There are the permission to be more. That's what I think Moonlight was, and why it was so stunning, is that it gave permission for the Black man, or the Black male presenting person to be vulnerable, as you said, to be gentle. Not even gentle doesn't feel right. Vulnerable might be the right word, but to be soft. And I even as I say it, I'm like, is that the word? Because I've been taught to think that soft is bad. As a man, as a Black man, I've been taught, as a Black male presenting like person, that to be soft is wrong and innately bad, and weak and faggy, you know, like, and fuck it, like that's I can hear it now. That's how fags act. Fags are soft. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, no. We have permission to be soft. Sorry,
But
that just fucked me up. I'm like, wow, that is such a, that's conditioning. That is training.
But
that
even as you said,
training.
Even as you said it, I saw it wash over you too, where it was like, oh wow, like I have those. I think that's coming back to sort of the original ideas, right? That representation is so deeply important.
Sorry, we cannot ignore the fact that my husband just came through with all the grocery bags. We're in the middle of this like deep conversation with all the grocery bags.
Hey, you gotta eat, right?
Exactly.
But coming back to that original idea, that like that representation and having people in rooms that can help that representation move forward and progress forward is so deeply important, you know, because how many people growing up, you know, I've heard so many people say, you know, just kind of looping back to Moonlight, I've heard so many people say, do you know what my life would have been like if I would have had a Moonlight at 6 years old?
I think about, and not specifically Moonlight, but just, sorry, you just shook me. That idea of like who you would be if you saw it sooner. Who you could be if you saw it sooner. If you saw an example, a representation, if you were given permission earlier, who would you be today? And I think about that. I'm sitting here in a pink overall and my nails painted and all this stuff, because last summer I shot this movie, Feel the Beat, on Netflix, played this character who identifies as a gay man, we said, although they never say it, but that's how we talked about them, Deco. I'm going to say that Deco non-binary, ultimately, or non-binary, gender non-conforming, ultimately. But what Deco unlocked in me and kind of made me realize was I couldn't step into who I am now in this moment sitting with you, which is a non-binary person, because I was never given permission. I didn't even know that that was something. She's not gonna cry. I didn't know.
It's all right.
I didn't know that that was something that I had the ability to claim, right? Because I didn't see it. There was no example of it. There was no representation of it, especially when you're talking about queer Black men or male presenting. Oftentimes, queer Black men or male presenting people are the joke. They are the punchline. And in many ways, I think white queer people have been able to, not completely, this is a gross generalization, but I think there have been more pushing of the needle for white queer characters than there have for Black queer characters. For the most part, Black queer characters are still this accessory and this joke. And so it makes it really challenging as an audience member to want to identify with that. Because even at 5 years old, even at 4 years old, even if you don't have the words, you understand how people are reacting to that character. And you know that that's not how you want people to react to you. And so you follow, and I'm saying you, but it's me, following the blueprint of masculinity, right? Which is, we don't paint our nails, which is, we walk with a limp, which is, you drop that voice down, so on and so forth. You don't be soft, you don't be vulnerable, you don't be weak. All of those permissions, which is really cutting off a part of your humanity, right? Like there's this literal side of your humanity that you're not accessing, that you're being conditioned and trained not to access. And it gets complicated. Like we could talk about safety and all those nuances, but ultimately, we could talk about that, but ultimately, there is still this cutting off of you're not getting the chance to be a full person. I'm not saying that every black man is gonna suddenly want to paint their nails, but they should have the option to wonder if that's what they want, to wonder if they identify with that. Yeah.
You're preaching a word. But I think you're also hitting on the idea that there is a layer and also a deep investment of white supremacy in limiting, the amount of space that Black bodies take up and allow themselves. There's an investment in us feeling that we need to fit a box. There's an investment in us feeling like we literally have to move out of the way on the sidewalk. There's an investment in us fitting inside of a little box and being defined in a cute way. Because because then it's easier for a white supremacist capitalist culture, which is a whole other thing, right? But it's not, because then we can be monetized, right? Then we can be, because we can be sold, literally, but also in 2020. We can be sold. Our image can be sold. Our pitch can be sold. You know what I mean? And I know you know.
Oh, I know, honey. They bottle it up and they want to sell it and they don't want to give us,
But that taking up space, I think, is part of that liberation, right? It's a part of the rebellion, right? It's a part of the rebellion that, and I think the next phases of television and representation and film and in our industry has to be about busting open these ideas, right? I mean, and I know as a Black cisgendered straight woman, the images of Black cisgender straight women are super, limited in some ways.
Yes,
and
1,000%.
it's stunning to see someone like shout out to Michaela Cole, who is literally
Queen.
just sort of like kicking her foot through through all of that. And it's the show on HBO, I May Destroy You, is literally showing you an entirely different idea of what Black womanhood can look like. And to me, that's where we need to go. We need to kind of open up and tell not a Black story, but many stories.
Yes.
Because that is the way we break out of the box. That is the way we sort of like get over the idea that we need to be monetized and we free ourselves.
Cherrye, I'm gonna ask you. Yes, come on with the gospel. I'm gonna ask you one more question.
Please do.
And then so that we can get about our lives and go break down some walls and bust through and expand.
I was gonna say, you got groceries and stuff, so I know you about to have some
that I do have to unpack. But
that is
my
real.
last question for you, it actually relates back to the griot, which is, what truth, because I know there are multiple, but what's the first truth that comes to mind that you want to pass down?
Whew.
Take your time.
That's deep. That's deep. Your voice is important. And by voice, I mean your perspective and what you have encountered in your life and the way it impacts you is informative and can't easily be overlooked. It can be navigated and worked through.
Yes.
But you got to reckon with where you came from. And that is personally, that is like the fact that personally, I grew up in the Northeast Bronx for the first, 12 years of my life. All of my elementary school teachers were these just badass Jamaican women. I'd be a fool to think that that doesn't in some way impact the way I see the world, right? Or the way I move through the world, right? Also, historically, my family, I can still, back in South Carolina, go to the cabin where my great grandmother worked for the family that probably owned her great grandmother. That is a thing that I think is important to understand and know that your perspective and your voice can navigate those things and keep those things in, because I think that history is important to keep in mind. That's one thing I would say. Recognize and embrace where you've come from, because you can't possibly have any sort of direction about where you're going unless you know where you've come from.
Yeah.
You can navigate. You can navigate differently. You don't have to, and you also don't need to become a direct product of everything you've learned and come from. You can navigate mistakes, harmful patterns, pathology, and move forward. You can.
Yes.
But you have to know your root. You have to know the ground on which you stand in order to move forward and grow. I think that's a super important piece for me. And I think that
Yeah.
ties directly into like the stories and why griot culture is so interesting and like important to me. I think we have to know where we are as a country. I mean, this is, you know, a whole other thing. As a country, that's why we're struggling so much, is that we just we don't want to acknowledge where we are and who we are.
We don't want to acknowledge where we've been.
Where we've been.
We've gotten to where we are. Absolutely.
And that refusal to do that is what keeps you stuck. So I would say, know who you are.
Yeah.
Know where you've come from.
Yes. And
the work is figuring out how to navigate that and to move forward.
Amen. Cherrye, I love you so much.